So as I said, I would like to talk about the somatic practices and discuss with you trauma-informed yoga and do some practices that would be considered like a somatic practices. 125, 125.
I was looking at trauma.
Ah. I will share today the links for the trauma videos that I made, because there is quite a lot of that in the previous trainings they were really interested. So I was just making and making more. But yeah, let's also talk about this together. So what's the big deal with the trauma-informed yoga? Like how is this different than the regular yoga that we know? Well, I think it very much depends who you're practicing with, because some instructors, without trying, they apply the trauma-informed principles. And some instructors are maybe more towards like more commanding, leading way of teaching. And with trauma-informed yoga, I feel the instructors are really very aware of the language that they're using. They also focusing more on creating the environment that would support people to feel familiar and kind of safe with what's happening. And I'm saying kind of safe because you cannot make somebody feel safe regardless how much you try. Like this is something that might happen to them or not. And, depending like how you set up the environment you teach in. So I think when you try to teach trauma-informed yoga, you just try to really very mindfully to set up the environment of the class that will support people, opening themselves to feel more safe. And that kind of can take us to the question like, okay, so in the first place, why somebody might not feel safe? And that's, often we lose this feeling of safety due to something that we would call trauma. And that trauma, it can be one particular event, but also it can be just a sequence of events that accumulated and put us into the fight or flight mode and made us feel that we are not in control of our life. And that's just, and it leaves a mark in the body. So trauma is not necessarily like an event, but how our body responded to the event, or to, well, yeah, I guess something that was said or happened. So that means you can have the same situation happen to two people, but their reaction to this might be very different. One person might really, start displaying like symptoms of traumatic event. Another person would shake off this maybe quicker. So our nervous system plays a big role in this, and the ability of our nervous system to self-regulate. So the numbers say in like I mostly encountered the research made in US. So it's said that about 70% of adults at some point in their life, they will experience trauma. So 70% of population, which is most. And if you teach to general public, there is a big chance that you will encounter somebody that to some degree is dealing with some trauma. And we can be talking about things that, you know, like maybe left a mark in us like years back. Or just recently. If that was just recent, probably the person is, you know, if they come for yoga, if they come, they are much more actively aware of, you know, like they are recovering. But if it happened, like if it's, let's say something happened during a class and it hooks or triggers something that, you know, maybe happened a long time ago, like left some like a residue, energetical, or, you know, like yeah, in the recipient's body, like they might be very surprised and say like, I don't know why I'm reacting this way. I just feel like I feel uncomfortable, or I feel angry, or, you know, like there are some emotions that are hard to just explain. And the thing that yoga does to us, it is opening us to become more sensitive to our body's communication. And we becoming more aware of some things that maybe we were always feeling, but simply we were just ignoring it. And now maybe we cannot ignore them. And so at first it might feel uncomfortable. So if we look at definition of trauma, it's often says like some experience that made us feel like we had no choice, no power, no control over what happened to us. And because this, you know, power was not in our hands, was somewhere out there, we might not feel safe later on. Like this, you know, that's having no power over what happens to us, that will easily put us into a state of fear. So, yeah. So we can talk here about, you know, soldier being in a battle, a child in an abusive home, a woman walking alone who is assaulted, you name it. Yeah. And what a little bit I want to bring now the traditional yoga perspective towards, like, you know, various experience that we accumulate through life. We can say that, you know, some things that we experienced left a strong mark, maybe were like a seed for some emotions, or like some behavioral patterns that then developed. So, you know, we are very resilient beings. We're trying to adjust and survive in various situations. So some behavioral patterns that maybe developed, like if you were somebody that lived in a house, that abusive house that you didn't feel safe, like maybe they were really very useful for surviving at that time, but maybe your circumstances changed, but the pattern remains. And if that's the situation, then we have something to work with. So that's why so many people are in therapy, because they are stuck in, you know, the old patterns that, you know, that this was like our operating system that made sense in a certain situation, but the situation maybe is not present anymore, but we are stuck with this operation system. And living with trauma is affecting how you know, how well we can connect with others, how well we can connect with ourselves, our health. I will play to you today about 12 minutes video that I think really pictures very well, like how the trauma can affect our life. So, okay. So we were talking about the seeds that maybe grow into a plant, right? So from the yoga perspective, like, okay, we have all the time we plant seeds, but if we do something more often, it's like watering the seed and allowing it to grow. So let's say when you step to your yoga mat, you are watering the seed of I am present now. I am listening to my body. I am, taking mental break from the chatter of or whatever, the yoga practice means to you. But the more we do something, it's like helping this to grow in you. So if you were watering kind of like some of the seeds that were developing during the, let's say, distress, or like a time of, when you didn't feel safe. So they can, big trees might grow out of those in you, kind of. And what the yoga practice, how it's helping us to work with it. So the Sutra 1.2 says, like, yoga is stopping of the fluctuations of the mind. Or we can say it like yoga is like stepping into your head and deciding to do the clutter. Like you are taking one thing by, one by one, observing it and deciding, do I keep it or do I throw it away? And it's like, we wash our bodies every day in order to not stink. We need to keep working on what is present in our mind every day too. Otherwise, we just get a lot of mess there. And it's a practice that we need to keep continuing. So sometimes uprooting something that grew for a long time might take a lot of effort. But if we commit to it and continue doing it, it will become easier and easier to stay on that path. So yoga practice can be seen as taking the power now in your hands, because now you consciously choose, what will I cultivate, what will I water, and what I decide to let go of. So does that kind of make sense? Yeah. I know it's not a light topic that we talk about, but often yoga teachers, they are into yoga because they are also searching for personal transformation. And in order to change us on a deeper level, we need to continuously like looking in. It's like a lot of dwelling, but also in a way with a curious mind. So, remembering, like, whatever you find, you don't get upset like, oh, I thought I get rid of this already. Like, why it's still here? It's, oh, I see, still here. Bye. Let me plant this instead. Let me water this instead. And don't pay too much attention, like, oh yeah, I'm still dealing with this. Like, if you make a big fuss and drama and start pondering, like, oh, like, I'm still stuck in this, like, you're just feeding the thing. So yeah, it's just like, oh, okay, I noticed it. Still here. Right. Thank you. I don't need you anymore. Goodbye. this is now what I put my effort towards. And yeah. So if the trauma is the experience that we felt like there was no choice, anytime you feel you choose mindfully, consciously what you do, you are empowering yourself. So you are healing. And as a yoga teacher, how we can give people the opportunity to choose for themselves, like, for example, teaching in a way that is inviting them to choose, making things optional, showing like there is this and this and this that you can choose, not saying like, today you need to give your 100% to this, you're slacking, and I see you're not doing your best, and like, yeah, you can do better, or like, oh, this post looks horrible, just, stop wasting my time, leave the room. Like, yeah, that would be a way of, not teaching within the trauma informed. Unfortunately, I'm those are the things that I heard from other teachers. So that's why I shared with you. So not all people that teach yoga means like they are always nice people, or yeah, I think we all have a lot to go through. Okay. So why somatic practices? Well, I'm looking if I have like some good definition. It's again, like there is so many definition. But okay. So, so somatic practices, they will focus on building our ability to feel the body, be aware of what's happening to the body. So they will involve things that increase our proprioception, which is that sensing the body in the space, but also very important, the interoception, which is like sensing what's happening to us inside. And it might mean simply like noticing when you're hungry, when your stomach is empty, but also, becoming more sensitive of like, oh yeah, the stretch on this side felt different than the stretch on the other side. Or yeah, so just being, or like realizing like, my palms are sweaty and I feel like breathing more in the chest and I kind of feel stuck here. That feels like I'm displaying some stress symptoms, and maybe I am stressed. Like, what's happening? What's going on? How can I make myself feel more grounded, more calm? So noticing, yeah. So noticing the body, internal sensations and various movements that happen. Okay. And so somatic comes from soma, and this is a Greek word that means of the body. And in English, it's defined as the body of an organism. And in Sanskrit, there was also soma that can be translated to the nectar of immortality. So your soma is the organism of your body and all the intelligence of existence it holds. It is the fabric of your being, threading your experience through the organism of your body. Soma is the vessel through which you give and receive life. It holds your emotions and expresses your thoughts and habits. You are made of soma, and you are soma itself. Okay, so words like being embodied, or being grounded, Like all that will fall into the somatic practices, somatic movement. So, and embodiment, that's, yeah, let me give you a little bit. This describes the experience and process of fully inhabiting your skin in such a way that your thoughts, actions, feelings, and intention find a cohesive expression through your body. It is when you exhibit and represent that thing you are describing. When we say someone is the embodiment of grace, we might be referring to the way they are inhabiting their movements, speech, and qualities of life. Embodiment is how you take your inside and show them on your outside. So for me to be an embodiment of peace, I would not only need to appear peaceful, but also really be peaceful in. Right. It's not that maybe, you know, there is a lot of explanation here, not that super straightforward, but I hope you kind of get. Okay. And then we have, you know, we have somatic psychology, we have somatic therapies, we have somatic psychotherapy, and yeah. So what somatic practices we can think of? So I have here a list of some practices that fall into the somatic practices. Unfortunately, if I give you the name, I don't think that those will mean anything because those are the brands. But there is Qigong here. So let's focus on the Qigong. And yoga, it's a little bit in between, but there are some buts for yoga to make it like a somatic practices. But okay, so thinking about Qigong, like what pace would you say Qigong is? Like if you came to Sue's class and she's doing like some of those like gentle, okay, I'm giving you answers. Gentle and slower movements, right? That are repetitive in nature. So that's kind of like what could make a practice more somatic. So the pace is slower. And there is a rhythm that is kind of repetitive in nature too. Because of this repetition, there is more of the familiarity being built, created. And when we slow down, we are more open to sense what is happening to us. So when, you know, things are happening quickly, it's easier to just go through the motion rather than really feel the movements and various sensations. So the pace is important. And the focus needs to be more in on the sensation rather than performing to get like a certain aesthetic or, yeah, certain outcome in a visual manner, I guess. So we could make yoga be like that. We can slow things down. We can do them more repetitive. We can build familiarity. We can invite people to sense. But not all styles of yoga will be like that. If you think about like power yoga or like, you know, really like fast flows, those not necessarily might be that helpful for this practice. So you could think maybe of a, like, you know, the yoga that not just says that brings the body, mind, and the heart together, but really like let you feel more connected to your mind, more connected to your body, and more connected to your intuitive heart after the practice. That could be seen as a yoga that is more like somatic. So we can make sun salutation a somatic practice. So slowing it down and making it more soft in a way, kind of less of, you know, that building heat, but more of like flowy movements could make this sequence more a somatic practice. Also, coming back to the nervous system regulation. So remembering like, okay, we had the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system arousal. So the somatic practices, in order to make us feel more safe, they need to be bringing us into this rest and digest state. And if you remember, like there was one of the cranial nerves that when we stimulate it, when we tone it, it helps us to activate that. Do you remember what was the name of it? Vagus nerve. Yes. So vagus nerve is the queen or the king of the nervous system regulation. And if you want to build your resiliency, you really need to think of like, how do I, you know, stimulate that aspect of me? And the things like that use touch, so self-massage, tapping, even I guess tapping is kind of like that, but what would be the name for this? Like more firm tapping?
Butterfly taps.
Oh yeah. I wanted to bring this as a technique one, yeah, but yeah.
Tapping?
I guess tapping too. Yeah, so you can have really gentle tapping when you use just like the tip of the fingers, but you can go much more firm too. And stimulating the area of the face, neck, around ears, swallowing, humming, singing. All of those will really stimulate the vagus nerve. Diaphragmatic breathing stimulates the vagus nerve. So doing all practices to improve the diaphragmatic breath, but also thinking, okay, diaphragm is still a muscle and muscles having range of motion. And I can also approach working with the range of motion of diaphragm. So considering like maybe might be tight or not moving that well because maybe the psoas, QL are tight. So doing the diaphragm vacuum, another idea there. Okay, so some techniques that you can, you know, do now. So let's practice this together. Now let's come and stand up. And because Anu mentioned this, so starting like have just take your hands crossed at your chest and give yourself like a tap, but maybe add also a sway for the body for it if you wish. If you feel comfortable, close your eyes or gaze to the ground. You can be, you know, really doing just like a butterfly wings, gentle touch, or maybe like more firm. This is one of the one of the techniques often used. You could maybe give yourself 3 minutes of doing this, even 1 minute would adding the swaying movements to this, that might, yeah, make it even more powerful. And if you want to combine even more, start humming on the exhale. Doing like, When you feel ready, gently release your hands. Take a moment to feel your feet. Noticing the breath happening on the inhale, what moves, the exhale, what moves. When you feel ready, open your eyes and come back to the room. Okay, so this could be seen as like a mini somatic practice. There is something a bit more vigorous, can be like the helicopter arms. And you can do it as slow, as gentle as you like, but you can also go all the way and kind of like slam the arms, limbs around you. And playing with the pace of it. You know, sometimes let's say like we are in a fight or flight because maybe we feel hot-headed. Maybe we just had an argument and suddenly becoming still might be a challenging. So starting with some more dynamic movement and gradually slowing down might be a way to do it. When you add the tap, you also energetically, like we are reaching to the kidneys, I guess. Yeah, is that kidneys? And those are the organs seen for anger, grief. Yeah. Okay. And slowly you can come back. Climbing onto your tippy toes and then dropping the heels. That's another way to kind of like give some discharge. Plus, it actually is quite good for the cardiovascular system too, because calves are like our second hearts. They are helping to pump the fluids from the legs back into the heart. So they are participating in this venous return. So, yeah. Okay. Maybe thinking of like, how can I add more touch? Like the opportunities for students to touch their own bodies when they practice. So, you know, standing in mountain pose, bringing hands to chest and to abdomen to sense the breath, that's great. Always can do it. Maybe when we raise hands, we find the ways to kind of like still go through the side of the waist and reach up. When we go into forward fold, maybe bringing hands to the legs and sliding down. Inhale, sliding up in front or back of the legs, whichever is, but you know, again, if we get too sensual with the touch, that might be a bit too much for some people. So, you know, being careful there. But yeah, like tapping and coming around like the sternum, around the clavicles, face, like the line of the brows, maybe cheeks, bones. This, I know this as the raindrops, but you know, there's so many names for, yeah. Massaging the ears, pulling onto the ears. Even just putting a finger in the ear and pulling it a little bit lower for like a 30 seconds or something is, yeah, you start yearning a lot. That's a sign of the vagus nerve, like start like stimulating. When we get relaxed, we start yearning, like we are a bit drowsy, sleepy. Yeah. Yeah, it's a sign of, you know, getting relaxed. I don't know. Anna, do you have some techniques here to share?
This one as well.
Acupressure points for
Yes.
around the nose.
Yeah, like here, and if you combine it with this,
Ah,
just like I don't want to do it with my fingers, but if you have like a gusha, yeah, maybe like that.
Mm-hmm.
Putting pressure there,
Mhm.
massage it.
Hmm. I like to go to the kind of the bridge, I don't know, the very, very top of the nose and push to the point that I feel a little bit like, a little bit of pain and release, kind of. So this sometimes, yeah, some days this place feels super tender. So you, at the bottom of the cheeks, there's also another kind of like a point of release. So you could go from the bottom kind of up and search again for a spot that feels a bit more tender. But even just like massaging, yeah. Oh, you know, we are moving limbs from the face as well. So having hands in a very like loose fist and stimulating the scalp, back of the head. But doing things like foot massage at the beginning of a yoga class or something like that could also work. So applying, like, you know, like choosing to use something that will help us feel our body more. So, you know, maybe just bringing the thumbs and pressing them into like just below the, there is like a kidney point here, kidney one or something like famous. Yeah, just holding for maybe a 30 seconds or a minute. Definitely, you can find a lot of inspiration in acupressure, Chinese medicine for the organs, you know, meridians and stuff. Yeah. So you don't need to change your class completely, but maybe adding some of those elements potentially at the beginning, somewhere when you do the opening, maybe when you move towards Shavasana in the cool down. And making sure that you do stop your flows from time to time. You take mountain pose or child's pose and you just remind people, like, notice what you feel now, what's happening with your breath, where you sense this pose, like where in your body you sense this pose affecting you the most, like, yeah. Not necessarily telling them like, oh, feel this great hamstring stretch, but just like, you know, like, yeah, notice what opens when you come here, what is resisting. Yeah. If you are really interested in trauma-informed yoga, those two books I recommend. So the Somatic Therapy Workbook and Trauma-Informed Yoga the toolbox for therapists. I leave them here. You can take a look. Do you feel you have some questions, observations to share something? Are you feeling more sleepy? Yeah, okay. I would like to play to you that video that I mentioned, so just give me a moment to pull this